Sad ćemo da gledamo kako je Katar kupio svetsko prvenstvo.
This is just a game, right? But it's not. It's really not. It's so much more than that. I want to show you a story that feels unique to our time in history. It's a story of how the organization that controls the sport that humans love most was hijacked by a tiny country that controls the resource that humans need most.
Qatar, wealth from oil and natural gas.
Inače, ajde pogledamo pre nego što baš da vam postavim lepo scenu. Qatar World Cup number of deaths. Koliko je radnika umrlo gradeći stadione i sve to? Od 6.500 do 15.000 ljudi je umrlo gradeći stadione za svetsko prvenstvo. Znači da vam postavim scenu o čemu će biti ovaj dokumentarac, verovatno, ne znam, ali piše kako je Katar kupio svetsko prvenstvo. Heavy baš.
Resulting in this. A World Cup held in the desert, in a country built off fossil fuels and foreign labor, with a citizen population the size of Honolulu, Hawaii. I want to show you how this happened. How Qatar, this tiny country, beat out the US, Australia, Japan and South.
Evo te koliko sam ja glup, jel vi meni verujete? Ja ne znam kako je to meni bilo u glavi. Ja sam bio ubeđen
Qatar, this tiny country.
Da je, brate, Dubai negde kod Tunisa. Zašto sam ja to mislio, brate? Igrao sam ono paradoks igrice gde ti je cela poenta da gledaš mapu, da gledaš zemlje. Ja sam bio ubeđen do pre mjesec dana da je... Mislim, nisam bio ubeđen, ali ono, nešto u glavi mi je bilo da je Dubai kod Tunisa, znači ono... Kringe.
Beat out the US, Australia, Japan and South Korea by convincing 14 of the 22 most powerful men in football to vote for them to become the host of the 2022 World Cup.
The winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
Korupcija goes brr.
Here we go. We've been deep in this, trying to make a web, trying to make a visual that will help us understand FIFA and why this World Cup is being held where it's being held. I want to show it to you, and I've been really wrestling with how to boil this down, and I think there's just three major things that we need to understand if we want to understand how Qatar bought the World Cup. Check this out. Okay. There's three major things you have to understand to make sense of this story. They are FIFA, you have to understand the World Cup, and you have to understand...
Što možeš da nam objašnjam kod da smo retardirani, kao možda znaš FIFA, svetsko prvenstvo i šta je lopta. I kao crta nam.
And Qatar. All right, this is our list. If you understand these three things independently, you can put them together to determine what really happened here and how this tiny desert country ended up with the World Cup. So, let's start with FIFA. FIFA was started by 7 European nations in 1904. The original goal here was to help organize matches for association football, which is football. It's the thing we all know. It's the game where two teams of 11 players try to kick a ball into a goal. Football was no means invented here at this time, at this place. People have been kicking a ball around for like a million years. But it was here in Europe in the early 1900s when the modern authority for football was born, and born in pretty humble beginnings. But FIFA quickly grew into a transnational, quasi-political authority that spans the whole globe. In fact, we have a map for that.
Kako dobra animacija ima lik, nevjerovatno, brate.
So
Za YouTubera, ono,
this is FIFA
bolesno.
today. It is massive. It represents 211 countries or associations that all belong to this one giant sporting organization. It's the most powerful, easily the most powerful sporting organization in the world. And it's got these 6 major regions or confederations. And it was the leaders from these regional confederations who in 2010 sat on FIFA's executive committee, based here in Zurich, in this bunker-like headquarters. I was actually there just a few weeks ago, actually. I'm in Zurich. This is where the FIFA headquarters, the FIFA museum are. This is where the votes happened.
nikad ne slušaj muškarca koji nosi kapu u kući. Veoma istinito.
Okay, let's get back to this. Here we go. The 24 most powerful men in football, the ones who would go on to decide who would be the host of the 2022 World Cup. Here they are. They're just hanging out on our diagram. Sorted by their confederations. Sepp Blatter, the president, right here at the top. Swiss guy. It's off the list. FIFA, we didn't go over all of it. There's obviously way more to FIFA than what I just talked about. The corruption, the scandals, all of it. But for the purposes of this video, which is trying to answer the question, how did Qatar end up with the World Cup? What we need to know is what we just talked about. The executive.
Nervira me, brate, što je prošlo 6 minuta klipa, osjećam se kao da ništa nije rekao. Samo da je 5 puta ponovio kako je Katar ukrao svetsko prvenstvo i ponavljao nam je ovu listu. Evo, jel sam u pravu, brate? 6 minuta ništa se nije desilo.
Executive committee, the 24 most powerful men in football. I'm going to cross it off the list. Next on our list, the World Cup. So eventually FIFA got big enough to where they could put on a big international tournament and people would actually come. They held it in Uruguay in 1930. 13 teams participated and they called it the World Cup. It quickly became the most prestigious tournament in football and eventually would become the most viewed sports event on the planet. Beating out even the Olympics if you consider that 1.1 billion people, like a decent chunk of the entire global population, were simultaneously watching in 2018 when France
ja ni ne gotivim fudbal,
final in Moscow.
a meni se, uzbuđen sam za svetsko prvenstvo. Gleda mi se s rotacima, bleji mi se kao gleda mi se Srbija s rotacima. A boli me dupe za fudbal. Baš jak efekat ima.
1.1 billion people at the same time all watching the same thing. I mean, that's insane, but it's also kind of amazing. Like, what other thing brings that many people together? It is an amazing thing what global football has become, and that is basically thanks to FIFA.
Sport has the power to inspire and unite people.
I mean, I'm immediately like actually almost crying. Like this is beautiful stuff. Look at this. Look at this guy.
Pokazuje, brate, golo telo lika, kao, brate, koliko sam napaljen, ne mogu da, samo da krenem da plačem.
Like actually almost crying. Like this is beautiful stuff. Look at this.
Pojmu bradajicu.
Look at this. These moments of like amazing like performance and then the reaction of these crowds. But
kako ništa ne govori, kako sam uzbuđen, pustio highlight reel.
It must be noted that when you have this much attention on one event, 13% of the entire global population watching at one time, it will quickly become less about the beauty of this game and more about, I mean, you know what I'm going to say, more about money. With so much attention, corporations pay endless money to get their logos anywhere near this stuff. Here, or here, or here. Okay, that's not that surprising. What blows my mind is how far governments will go to also pay endless money to get anywhere near the World Cup. Not because they make money in return like the corporations. They always end up losing tons of money. But because there's a power in having the entire world focused on your country for a few weeks.
Together, you've given the American people an extraordinary opportunity to welcome the world to our shores as host of the 2022 FIFA World Cup.
I mean, look at this. Look at this. We plotted this, actually. We found this data. Every 4 years there's a World Cup.
Kaže lik, kada neko ko ne zna ništa o fudbalu pokuša da ga shvati, bukvalno, kao, ljudi šutiraju, brate, loptu u mrežu, ovaj čovjek napravio Excel tabele, kao.
And this is how much each of these countries have spent on their World Cup. These are, again, taxpayer money here. This is government money being invested into hosting the World Cup. Throw this sucker onto a bar chart and you get something like this. Like, it's getting out of hand. Like, every year they spend more and more and more. Oh, and spoiler alert, wait till I show you this graph with Qatar in the mix. Minds will be blown, I can promise you that.
Bruh. Bro. 220 milijardi. To je više para nego što Elon Musk ima, brate. Za svjetsko prvenstvo. Ovo je možda više nego i za olimpijadu, jebote.
The point is that countries are willing to pay more and more to get the World Cup in their country, a moment for them to put their best foot forward on a global stage. This is what we like to call soft power. Okay, I am crossing the World Cup off of our list, not because I covered every angle of it, but because for the purposes of this story, this is what matters. Countries are more and more willing to pay unlimited amounts of money to try to get this event in their country because a billion people are going to watch it and it makes them look good. Okay? We're crossing it off. All right. On to the last piece of our puzzle.
Kako da ne budeš korumpiran, brate? Ja bio sam u fazonu, brate, 6 milijardi Rusija dala, kao jebi ga, kao što se bavite korupcijom? Da kao Katar 220 milijardi, kao pa, brate, možda 6,5 mrtvih nije toliko puno, brate. Da sam vlasnik FIFA, ja, brate, ono, do 20 mogu da prečutim za 10-20 milijardi. Po milijardi može da umri, ono, 100 ljudi, brate.
We're crossing it off.
Soft para zvuči kao entuzijastično općenje sa mekanim kurcem. Ovo nisam trebao da pročitam.
All right, on to the last piece of our puzzle, Qatar, a country that should be pronounced Qatar, but I'm not going to be that pretentious guy who shows up trying to like say it in the local pronunciation because it makes me sound cultured and cool. I am that guy. I'm trying to not be that guy. So for now, I'm just going to say it like a Texas oilman says it, Qatar. Okay? Thanks. I'm going to be really quick on this history of Qatar. Like, I'm not going into the full thing, okay? This is a very juicy history that I could easily do a whole video about. I'm going to give you the spark notes, which is that Qatar, for most of its history, was populated by nomadic tribes and fishing villages, whose biggest industry was pearl diving, which is like a pretty gnarly thing to do. Like, you like tie a rock around your ankle and go under to find clams and then open the clams and see if there's pearls. It was like hard work. The British...
Kao to ti je glavni posao zemlje, da skačeš sa kamenom i da uzimaš bisere, kao... Šta? Kao ne postoji bolji način, kao imate neke mašine, ne brate, mora kamen oko struka, brate, i da skočiš u vodu i da ih ručno tražiš. Treba imamo podmornici, imamo sva... Ne, kao kamen, sine i...
Find clams and then open the clams and see if there's pearls. It was like hard work. The British eventually swooped in because the Industrial Revolution was happening and they smelled oil over here. Qatar becomes a British protectorate until 1971 when they became an independent country, an Islamic constitutional monarchy run by one family dynasty. So by the 70s, the British were gone, but crucially, the oil was not. And because of said oil, Qatar quickly transitioned from a poor tribal society to a globally connected energy hub with unlimited money. This accelerated in the 70s when Qatar won the...
Da, Bog, kako su mogli da ubiju 20.000 ljudi i dalje organizuju svetsko prvenstvo? Unlimited money.
Fossil fuel lottery and discovered that they just happened to be sitting on the largest known natural gas field on the planet. This guy. They share a bit of it with the territorial waters of Iran, but most of it's theirs. Oh, and by the way, all this fossil fuel and the revenue coming from it belongs to this teeny country, which this is a very teeny country. Like, we're talking about a country that fits inside of the sole of the boot of
Koliko ima
Italy.
Katar stanovnika?
I mean, it doesn't totally fit. It's like, but it's tiny, and we're talking about a few 100,000 Qataris here. This isn't a big population, and yet they're all getting in on this unbelievable amount.
3 miliona, ali fazom većina nisu...
Like, we can't fathom how rich
Katarci.
this tiny little thumb-shaped country
300.000 su
They could not
Katarci.
spend their money fast enough. They didn't have enough labor to build all the stuff that they had money for, so they started to import labor from other countries. 95% of the people who live and work here are not Qataris. They're expats from other places, 95%. Meanwhile, the teeny population that are actually Qatari citizens live very good lives. They're some of the richest people on the planet. Most of them work very cushy government jobs that pay really well. They live in a welfare
Nije Bicko tu, bacio bi mu ja, bez donacija.
state where their needs are met because there is just unlimited money for everyone in this country. Okay, that's Qatar. So this is the moment where the three pieces of our puzzle come together. Because in the 90s, Qatar starts to read the tea leaves. They start to realize that the world is going to move away from fossil fuels, the one thing that they have. Their gravy train is going to come to an end in a few decades. It's time to prepare for the future, said Qatar, by investing their billions and billions, hundreds of billions of extra dollars into anything and everything that is not fossil fuels. Diversify. So they start to go nuts. Everything from real estate in Singapore and New York City, to buying the St. Petersburg airport in Russia, to buying Miramax Films and the Italian luxury brand Valentino. Like, boy, should I just make an entire video on Qatar Investment Authority? Because that would be juicy. In 2017, the BBC noted that Qatar owns more land in the UK than the Queen does. And as a part of this big diversifying strategic investment effort, Qatar focused on turning their country into a global hub for prestigious international events. You see where I'm going with this? Lucky for them, there is a shortcut to the most prestigious event in the World Cup. Oh, and
Pa te, je li svetsko prvenstvo veće od olimpijade? Po gledanosti. Ne, seri. Aha, ovo je za Super Bowl. Jebote, olimpijada 2 milijarde gledalaca, svetsko prvenstvo 3,5 milijarde, pola planete. Damn. Počnemo da rešavamo, birat ćemo pobednike, da vidimo.
This event happens to be run by an organization that speaks a language that they're very familiar with. The language of money and power and influence. And here's where we are.
Što je bio Alzheimer, Parkinsonov. The language of
money and power and influence. And here's where we are. So we're back here to this web, these gatekeepers of international football, the people who voted on who was going to host the 2022 World Cup. 14 of these guys voted.
Ovako ja kad sam istraživao Niksa kad je produžio noge, brate, on papiri pozivio kao Debra, Kavgastan, Kirgistan, 17 liku, doktor ovaj.
Qatar.
Nije bilo toliko bolesti.
And I want to know why. Qatar, a country that FIFA itself, when they were evaluating all the bidders for the hosting, decided was not super suited for this. There's all these parameters that countries should have to be a good host. Qatar didn't really have a lot of them. And in fact, they had the opposite. Super hot weather, no widespread football infrastructure, and perhaps most strikingly, not a huge tradition of football or even a significant local population to spread football to in their place. They have a couple 100,000 people. The World Cup is supposed to bring football to new regions and spread it throughout a country. How are they going to do that in a hot desert oasis with like 300,000 people? So let's do this.
Vičo postao šalivđija. Ba! 2 tačke, čed 2 tačke. Da, ljudi su mi rekli da govorim da lajkujete streamove, ne morate lajku što se mene tiče, ali kažu da bolje prolazi. Nemam pojma ljudi, šta je poenta, brate, realno, para vrti, brate, deburgije neće, realno, I naravno da će najviši ljudi na toj nekoj hijerarhiji biti korumpirani, brate. Zato što imam osjećaj, sad ne znam, taj Sepp Blatter, brate, koji je kao primio te pare ili što već za svetsko prvenstvo. Ti da dođeš na tu poziciju moći, teško je veoma da budeš dobar. Veoma je teško. Možeš budeš Game of Thrones lik, Machiavellian, manipulišeš ovo, prihvatiš tu mito, tamo središ nešto, ovo, Tako da, turna priča.
Done with our list.
Naravno, pustio bi da umre 20 ljudi za 200 milijardi, nemojte prvo
Move on to the next part of this video, which is probably the part we put the most effort into, and I want you to stick with me here, because the point isn't to go into every...
Kaže, ovo kao Veli Ilić, ljudi mnogo kradete, da kraduckate pa da se dogovorimo. Ima dokumentarac od 4 epizode na Netflixu, razotkrivanje FIFA uoči svetskog prvenstva. Da. Pa da, brate, baš su korumpirani.
Single detail of how some of this corruption went down. No one's going to remember every little detail. That's not the point. The point is to give you a sampling of the
Šta je fora, brate, kao sad ćeš ti kao da protestuješ svetsko prvenstvo zato što su korumpirani, hoćeš kurac, brate. Svakog zanima, nekako je začarani krug, ali dobro je da postoji kao pritisak medija na to. Mnogo je dobro što je na lik došao i bacio pare, lik. Znaš, mora da postoji sram. Neki malo to da se, kontrira
how
jebote.
influence and power works, not just in FIFA, but in the international system generally. How powerful people get what they want. We'll never know for certain because this vote was secret, but we know Qatar got 14 of these guys, and I think I have a pretty good idea of how for most of them. We're gonna start with this guy. This is Mohammed bin Hammam. He's one of the executive committee members, and he's from Qatar, okay? We can safely assume that he probably voted for his own country. But more importantly, it was him, a big-wig international football guy, who helped pull the strings on everyone else on this web. Starting with this guy. Jack Warner. He's an executive committee member from Trinidad and Tobago. Leaked emails and bank records obtained by the Sunday Times revealed that before the vote, bin Hammam deposited $450,000 directly into Warner's account, and later even more, totaling $1.6 million. Just like literally, like he just
Možda mu je bio na slavi, brate, pa kao umjesto kafe i čokolade, kaj brate, samo ti pošle.
paid him. Like this is the simplest version. Just like I will pay you money to give so you do what I want you to.
Baš me zanima koliko bi ukupno koštalo to da se kupi kao svetsko prvenstvo.
It's just like so straightforward.
Koliko, ajde damo estimate. 300 miliona. Koliko sam lupio sad, brate. Ako su potrošili 220
No
milijardi na
wonder, a month after the
organizovanje.
vote, in an email, Warner called his Qatari colleague bin Hammam, quote, the only brother I have in football. Okay, one guy down. Who else? Next, we have the 3 executive committee members from the South American Confederation. The US Department of Justice has gotten involved with these guys. They recently released an unsealed indictment against all 3 of them, alleging that these 3 were, quote, offered and received bribes in exchange for their votes. I mean, it's pretty unsatisfying. We don't have the evidence that the DOJ is using for this case, but they're building a case. Oh, and by the way, 2 of these guys just died in like the past couple of years.
Jeffrey Epstein gas, kao. Ricardo Luis didn't kill himself.
Next up, we've got these 3 guys from the Africa Confederation. A year before the vote, the African Confederation was having their annual meeting in Angola, which by
To
the
bi fora, brate, pošto je kao Afrika siromašnija od Južne Amerike, kao ovom je dao 600.000, a ovom u Africi kao 6 soma i kao i 4
way was
krave.
paid for by the Qatar bid team, the people who were like trying to convince people to vote for the World Cup. They paid for the whole thing. Okay,
Koliko?
I get it. Trying to like lobby for your team, that's fine. But here's where it gets shady. While they were at this meeting, the Qatar bid team met with these 3 executive committee members. And according to a former employee who was in the room translating, the Qataris offered $1.5 million each to these guys.
Možeš zamisliti da uložiš 200 milijardi u prvenstvo i neki lik iz čačka ti utrpa 5 golova,
In
bukvalno.
exchange for their promise that they would vote for Qatar. A year later,
Šta?
vote for Qatar. $5 million each to the. In the room translating, the Qataris offered $1.5 million each to these guys in exchange for their promise that they would vote for Qatar.
Ovo je realno jeftino, brate. Da organizuješ svetsko prvenstvo, na primjer, ako njih ima 20, svakom daš po 1,5 milijuna, to je jeftino, brate. Ono, šta, brate, Jokić sledeće godine dovede, brate, svojom platom svetsko prvenstvo u Srbiju.
A year later, this employee turned whistleblower actually went back on her statement, saying that she actually lied about it and that there were no bribes. Kind of fishy. What's your incentive to lie? But then the FBI showed up at her front door and she admitted that she was pressured to say that she had lied about it and that actually the bribes happened. I don't know, man. We don't, like, I side with the whistleblower. You can decide how you feel. And now her life is basically ruined. She said in an interview that, quote,
I will always look over my shoulder for the rest of my life.
oh, okay, and while we're talking about this, one of those 3 guys that apparently got $1.5 million was later filmed by undercover reporters negotiating an $800,000 bribe in exchange for his vote. Like smoking gun evidence. Same thing happened to this guy, the executive committee member from the Oceania region. And they actually got disqualified from voting. So these 2 guys didn't actually vote. So we're now down to 22 EXCO members. Let's keep going. Okay, so we've gone over the instances where there was direct money given in exchange for the promise to vote. The next phase of the story are more subtle versions of influence, less overt, less smoking gunish. Like this guy from Thailand. He's the executive committee member from Thailand. 4 months before the vote,
Eto koja slika, brate.
he's the executive committee member from
Lik Blake kao Bond vilan ovakav.
Thailand. 4 months before the vote, Thailand and Qatar were renegotiating an energy deal. Thailand was trying to get a better price for their natural gas, something Qatar has a lot of. But for some reason, this guy, a FIFA executive committee voting member, was at the meeting. Wait, what? Why is this football guy in the room while there's these big gas negotiations going on? Yes, I'm being coy. We know where this is going. I mean, you gotta read these leaked emails. They're so juicy. You've got a FIFA guy emailing a Qatar gas guy from Qatar Petroleum. They're talking about the development of their two football associations from their different countries, and then saying that they're gonna liaise with the CEO of the gas company to follow up about a liquid natural gas sale. I mean, it's just so clear what's going on here. Favorable terms of the deal in exchange for, hey dude, make sure to vote for our country. Oh, and who was this meeting between the gas guy and the FIFA guy arranged by? You guessed it, this guy, Mohammed bin Hammam, the executive committee
Playmaker, brate. Kako se kaže ono, libero.
member from Qatar, who's pulling all these strings. Oh, by the way, just a little side note here. Going through these leaked emails, I couldn't help but notice that the FIFA guy's email was Sour Piggy at redacted. Sour Piggy? Sour Piggy. Sour Piggy's doing a lot of corruption lately. Okay.
I'm cutting, dude.
Oh, shit. Okay, and then there's a few just like sort of circumstantial ones that give you a flavor of how this works. Like this guy who sold his family's land to Qatar a year after the vote for 27 million pounds, which was like way over asking price. And this executive
Treba je liči na pingvina iz Batmana, brate. Evo, molim te. Kako da ne prihvati, brate?
27 million pounds, which was like way over asking price. And this executive
Jeste cringe bio ovaj lik kao.
committee member, whose son was given a job at a private Qatari hospital shortly after the World Cup vote. Both of these guys, of course, like everyone else on this list, denies any connection that this was influence. But now we're at the most significant moment in all of this, the thing that really tipped the scales for the vote. And it has to do with this confederation, the most powerful, the European Confederation. Specifically this guy, Michel Platini, a former French football
Svi izgledaju kao vampiri, brate. Svi jebeno izgledaju kao vampiri. Pogledajte ovo, brate. Nevjerovatno, brate. Ovo jedino malo ne izgleda kao vampir. Ovo je vampir.
Confederation. Specifically this guy.
Ja pričam da oni svi liče na vampire. Ja sam se našao.
Michel Platini, a former French football player turned FIFA guy. He was the president of this confederation, which inevitably meant that he has sway over these other dudes. Just 1 week before the vote, like crunch time, Platini got an invitation that he couldn't refuse. A luncheon with the French president at his palace. Platini later said that before this meeting, he was planning on voting for the US to host the World Cup in 2022. But he goes to this luncheon, and who else is there? No big deal, just these two guys, the most powerful dudes in Qatar. One of them the prime minister of Qatar, and the other the current
This guy slaps your girlfriend's ass, what do you
Emir
do?
of Qatar, from like the old dynasty family. It's important to remember the context here, like what's happening. This is 2010. The world has just been rattled by a global financial meltdown. And the president of France, Sarkozy, is stressed. And he's in the room with the leaders of Qatar who are not nearly in the same financial trouble. See the section before about unlimited amounts of money thanks to fossil fuels.
Jebote infinite money glitch, brate. Sve je moguće kad imaš infinite money glitch, brate.
And it's clear that these Qataris want something that the Frenchmen in the room can deliver them. A vote for their country to host the World Cup, something they really want. According to sources close to this meeting, Sarkozy flat out told Platini to vote for Qatar. Why?
Kaže lik, sve bi ovo bilo u redu kad bi se ovako izraživali isto tako deljenje svetskog prvenstva zapadnih zemlja. Može biti istina, u smislu da je pristran, pošto sam u ovome najviše ikad čuo. Sigurno se ovo dešava, brati, kad druge zemlje organizuju. Kao, nije to samo kao fair glasanje. Sigurno i Amerika šalje na ručkove, ovo, ono, suklja se po tom svetskom prvenstvu od ručka do ručka. Ono, ali tu stranu nikad nećete vidjeti, zato što, ono, Niko, ja mislim, nije bolji u propagandi od Amerike. I u filmovima, serijama, znači kidaju, brate, onda znaju da ispričaju priču. Bolje si pustio Nikolu Gradovića da nas proziva.
Why? Well, we'll never know. But it's clear that he wanted a few things from Qatar. In this same meeting, Sarkozy told the Qataris that...
Ali u zapadu neće toliko umreti radnika, istina, da, to je fora s Amerikom. Realno, brate, ti u Rusiji ne smiješ ništa loše napiš. U Kataru sigurno ne smiješ ništa loše napiš. U Americi realno postoje ono novinari, ono pišu, brate, prozivaju Trumpa, prozivaju Bidena. I postoje, žive, brate. To jaka im je ta kultura kao slobodnog govora. Reče Mari, onda shvatio su banovali Trumpa s Twittera.
That he wanted Qatar to buy the French football team Paris Saint-Germain, which happens to be Sarkozy's favorite football team, and at the time was in financial ruin. After this meeting, a few important things happened. Number one, Qatar did end up buying that football team for 60 million pounds, just like Sarkozy wanted. They turned it around, and soon it became a star-studded team with merch that's worn by the world's most popular celebrities. And then we suddenly see an uptick in big trade deals between Qatar and France. Qatar Airways buys 50 giant planes from Airbus, the giant French airplane maker. I mean, if you look at what one of these planes cost in 2010, times it by 50, we're looking at $18 billion, a massive deal. And in the end, Platini in this room with his...
Ja ne mogu da zamislim 100.000 evra, kao 18 milijarda, kao 18, a? To je poprilično mnogo.
President telling him to do what the Qataris want. We need them right now. And it worked. Michel Platini flipped his vote from the USA to Qatar. He admitted it later, that's not even speculation. The president of the executive committee, Sepp Blatter, was pissed about this and later said that this was the defining moment for Qatar winning.
They have influenced Michel Platini at that time to vote for Qatar.
Because remember, Platini then went back to his European Confederation with 8 executive committee members, 8 votes, and he almost certainly influenced others to join him. One book I read claims that he took 4 votes with him, but we'll never know. And then, on a cold day in December of 2010, the day of the vote came.
The 2022 FIFA World Cup.
So on that fateful day, in the winter of 2010 in Zurich, all the guests arrived.
Idu, brate, u Transilvaniju, da se breje s Drakulom. Pogledajte ovo, pov Drakula u Rumuniji 1413. zove ovo ostale vampire na breju, na ručak. Ko će da organizuje probijanje kolce od 1418.
Day in the winter of 2010 in Zurich. All the guests arrive because it was voting day.
From every corner in America. Clearly, I think we had an absolutely fantastic bid.
Well, we got a great bid, so we just got to go in there and give it everything that we've got.
These 22 men cast their votes in multiple rounds until a majority victor emerged. At least 11 of them voted from Qatar since round 1. And finally, 14 votes were delivered to Qatar, a majority and almost double what the USA got. So yeah, that's how it went down. That's how it went down. Like, look, we'll never know exactly what happened. A lot of this stuff we know because it leaked out and we were able to put it all together. But
Sine, ali im radi ovaj Mohamed kino eskalaciju. Ko zna šta im priča, brate?
a lot of this stuff we know because it leaked out
Mohamed kao, ja...
and we were able to put it all
Pa malo po ramenu ovo.
together. But the fact is, every one of these men has been involved in some corruption investigation. I mean, it's no surprise that this stuff happened, and probably so much more. FIFA is corrupt to the
Koliko bi bilo power move, brate, da mu ovaj baca.
that this stuff
Ovaj kao...
happened, and probably so much more. FIFA is corrupt to the core. Qatar didn't make this happen. Qatar just saw an organization that spoke their language, the language of unlimited money. And they used that to get what they wanted, to prepare for the future, to diversify, to get the world to look at them.
It is the biggest event in the world.
So no, this isn't just a game. The reason why all of this matters is because football can be a beautiful thing. No matter what language someone speaks, or their politics, or their god, or whatever, they have this universal language, this game, a global culture full of screaming and cheering and crying and pride and identity. It's ridiculous, yet so beautiful, so uniquely human. And in a very real way, football is a mirror to the world. What's acceptable here in this most revered sport is what's acceptable everywhere. So, by using money and influence to get the bid for the World Cup, Qatar showed us just how power works in our world, and who doesn't, and validated an old idea that the rules of fair play don't really matter if you have enough money. Hey, thanks for watching and for sticking around till the end of the video. This is just the first of 2 videos we made on this topic. The next video publishes soon and it's
Para vrti, de Burgija neće.